Good day to everyone and a very warm welcome to our event here at SGInnovate. My name is Ziki and I'm the Executive Director for Community and Brand at SGInnovate. Thank you for joining us for our session today, held in partnership with our very good friends Innovation Norway. For those who are not familiar with SGInnovate, allow me to share a little about what we do. We are a private entity owned by the Singapore government. We believe that the world has hard problems that can be addressed by deep tech. And our mission is to work with entrepreneurial scientists to build deep tech startups from Singapore for the world to address some of these problems. We do this by investing in promising deep tech startups, grooming and matching talent with startups as they build and scale their companies. We firmly believe in the power of the community and partnerships. As part of our work, we organize events such as this to bring like-minded, passionate people together to share knowledge and to drive conversations and inspire innovation. Today, SGInnovate, we have the largest and fastest growing deep tech community in Singapore with some 60,000 individuals in our community, not just from Singapore, but from across the world. Innovation can only be achieved when we collaborate with others, leverage each other's strengths to achieve greater outcomes for the common good. I'm very thankful for our panel of experts joining us today. In our session today, we will hear about the clinical trial strategies in Norway. I look forward to some insights that may be helpful to other healthcare players in Singapore and across the world. Perhaps some of these best practices may help to advance clinical studies and enhance existing infrastructures. Thank you again for joining us at this session. I encourage you to be part of the conversation. Use the chat function to engage with your fellow attendees. Tell us which part of the world you are joining us from, and use the Q&A box and ask questions of the speakers. Take this opportunity to get into the brains of the experts that we put together with Innovation Norway. Before we start the panel session, I would like to invite Paul Kasman, Director of Innovation Norway, to say a few words. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Ziki. Paul is unable to join us in person today, but we have his pre-recording of his opening remarks, and we'll pull it up now. Margaret, please.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Seki. Allow me to first express special thanks to our partners to this event, SGInnovate and Enterprise Singapore, as well as our colleagues in Norway, the Norwegian Ministry of Health and Care Services, the Directorate for e-Health, the Association of Pharmaceutical Industries, Oslo Cancer Cluster, Norway Health Tech, and Inven2. Now, the topic of today's event focuses on the experiences we have with clinical trials in Norway. Most of you are probably not familiar with the Norwegian healthcare system and healthcare sector. So I thought I'd start off by giving you a brief introduction. If we look at some of the key numbers for a healthcare sector in Norway, they will be quite familiar to you here in Singapore. In Norway, we have an increasingly elderly population, which means diminishing tax incomes in the future. And with longer life expectancy comes rising healthcare costs and more chronic diseases. In fact, 75% of Norwegian healthcare budget relates to the treatment costs of chronic diseases. And finally, there is a future crunch on the availability of healthcare workers, much similar to what you are experiencing in Singapore. At the same time, the population has a high degree of digital competency. This means that the public system for healthcare, education, and social security is highly digitalized, which again makes it easier to adopt innovative solutions to help solve these challenges. And as you can understand, Norway and Singapore share a lot of similarities with regards to the challenges that we are facing. Founded on the principles of universal access, all residents of Norway are covered by the national insurance scheme, ensuring equal access to care for all. Norway is divided into 4 regional health authorities, the Southeast Norway Regional Health Authorities being the largest, providing services to approximately 3 million of the Norwegian inhabitants. If we turn briefly to the hospitals in Norway, all regional hospitals are university hospitals connected to academic institutions and medical schools. There are altogether 6 university hospitals, 2 of each for the Southeast and Western regions, respectively, and 1 each for the Middle and Northern regions. Oslo University Hospital, the OUS, is the largest hospital in Norway with 24,000 employees and more than 1.2 million patient treatments in 2019. A large portion of academic and clinical research in Norway is carried out either at or in collaboration with the OUS. Clinical trial support and clinical trial units are part of the university hospital structure. And that brings me over to today's topic, clinical trials. There is strong support from the political leadership and throughout the public system towards increasing the number of clinical trials in general and for industry-sponsored clinical trials specifically. And private-public partnerships are highlighted as instrumental in achieving this goal. And the industry has been asked to serve as advisors and give input to the strategies being developed. So what makes Norway so interesting for conducting clinical trials? Well, for a start, we have world-leading resources for clinical trials. In Norway, all inhabitants are provided with a personal identification number at birth that follows them across all public systems throughout life: school, family physicians, hospitals, dentists, work, social benefit system, prescription data, and so forth. The personal identification number can be used to link information from separate databases, and high patient compliance and few patient loss to follow-up is important as well. To ease access to real-world data across our national registries, a national real-world evidence platform was recently launched, where both private and public stakeholders can request for extraction of data from either a single register or compiled from multiple sources at reasonable costs. In particular, within the field of oncology, the quality of the National Cancer Registry can provide long-term follow-up of study patients after the study has been completed. So that's a very, very brief introduction of the Norwegian healthcare sector and clinical trials in particular. I wish you a very good event and look forward to discussing further with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you with this introduction, Shiki and Paul. It is now my pleasure to introduce you with our first speaker, Maiken Engelstad. Maiken is the Deputy Director General at the Ministry of Health and Care Services. Maiken, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We can go straight to the next slide. I think I'm going to present the National Action Plan on Clinical Trials. If you could just change, yes. But initially, I'm going to show you a couple of slides from a white paper on the health industry that was presented in 2018, which is actually the backdrop for this National Action Plan on Clinical Trials. And the white paper was presented by the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries, but in close collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Health. So the white paper has a dual aim. On the one hand, and this is all, it was really presented to address some of the challenges that you heard for the Norwegian healthcare system that you heard in the previous presentation. So the dual aim is really, on the one hand, to increase competitiveness in the Norwegian health industry, and at the same time to contribute to more sustainable health and care services with more effective prevention and treatment and care. And the message is really that Norwegian health and care services has a lot to gain from better cooperation with the business community. And we have some key policy objectives in this white paper. First of all, to establish a stronger culture for collaboration between the industry and the healthcare sector. Secondly, to make the healthcare sector an attractive partner for industry. And thirdly, to facilitate more commercialization for medical and health-related research. Next slide, please. So, as you know, the health industry differs from very many other industries in that it requires that products to be used on humans must undergo extensive testing through clinical trials. And hence this white paper, we actually present a number of key initiatives on the health industry related to clinical trials and to increase access to test facilities for medical devices. So in recent years, the Norwegian government has implemented a number of measures to facilitate an increase in the number of clinical studies in Norway. For example, we have earmarked funding for clinical research in hospitals. We have strengthened the research infrastructure, and we've developed indicators for both clinical trials and for other innovations. And in the white paper, we developed this further, and we really want to attract more clinical trials to Norway, both initiated by the healthcare services and by the industry. And one major action point is to present a separate action plan for clinical trials. Yes, next slide, please. So the National Action Plan for Clinical Trials was presented in January this year, and it has a 5-year, it's going to last for 5 years. And the key policy objectives are really threefold. First of all, to increase quality of care and patient safety through new knowledge and increased in competence that you gain through clinical trials. Secondly, to give more patients access to clinical trials. And thirdly, to make the public healthcare sector as a very attractive partner for the industry for clinical trials. Next, please. So the government vision is really very ambitious. It's a vision of full integration of clinical trials and clinical research in patient care and clinical practice. And this is a long-term vision, and we do not think that realization is within an immediate reach, but it's a very important political signal. And what it entails is that the effect of all treatments offered to patients should be documented systematically through different types of clinical trials. What it will require is really a change of culture, a change of internal priorities, change in leadership priorities in the hospitals. And it also means that we're going to focus both on clinical trials for new treatments, but also to evaluate standard care. Next one, please. This is, I'm sorry, this is in Norwegian, but this is the health research classification system. And what it shows is the number of clinical trials in different areas. So right at the bottom, there is an example of cancer. So that shows there's a number of clinical trials in cancer. And right at the top is the number of clinical trials for eyes. And as you can see, there is quite a difference in the number of clinical trials, but there are clinical trials in all the medical areas. And what we want to ensure is that patients from whatever they suffer from different diseases should be able to have access to clinical trials. Next, please. The other ambition is that we should have both increase in industry financed clinical trials, but also in the publicly financed clinical trials, and also to have a good balance between the two. Next one. So the aim of the paper, in 5 years, the ambition is that 5% of all hospital patients participate in clinical trials, and we can actually measure this both because we can measure the number of clinical trials and the number of new patients that take part in clinical trials every year. And we also want to increase, double the number of clinical trials. In the white paper, we have 9 priority areas, and then we have a number of initiatives to meet the identified challenges. I'll just show you the 9 areas. Next, yes. So the first one is to give patients more possibilities to participate in clinical trials. And some of the initiatives is to increase the number of decentralized studies or to have electronic consent for participation in clinical trials. The second one I already talked about is to integrate clinical trials in patient care, where some of the initiatives is to strengthen infrastructure, leadership, indicators. The third one is to increase collaboration between the healthcare industry and the healthcare sector. The fourth one is to increase throughput of clinical trials. The fifth one is, because we have a lot of clinical trials in the specialist healthcare services, we also want to increase clinical trials in primary care and dental care. The sixth one is to increase knowledge of clinical trials through the education system for healthcare personnel, but also by building competence through different measures. The seventh is to prepare Norway for the future of clinical trials, especially within personalized medicine. And the eighth is to increase the use of health data in clinical trials. And finally, the ninth one is to increase national and international collaboration on clinical trials. Next, please. So some of the key initiatives in this white paper that we present, one is that we have financial incentives for clinical trials. So the hospitals will be awarded financially by the number of clinical trials they have and the number of patients taking part in clinical trials. Another important initiative is to establish Trials, which is a one-stop shop for clinical trials and associated centers of excellence for clinical trials. And that should be a partnership model with industry. And the government has allocated 30 million kroners to this initiative this year. Next. Another initiative is actually to strengthen the work on personalized medicine in Norway. And we have a number of initiatives to strengthen clinical trials within personalized medicine. One is to increase number of gene panel testing and next generation sequencing for biomarkers, where the government allocated 45 million kroners to set up this in this year's budget. We want to establish a national genome center, and which you'll hear about later. We also have a Norwegian drug study which is a public-private partnership for clinical trials within cancer and personalized medicine. Next. We also have some initiatives within health data. For example, one initiative is to increase information for patients on which clinical trials are available for recruiting patients, and that's presented on a national web page called healthnorway.no. And then we have a focus on health data and the use of real-world data in clinical trials, both for recruitment, for feasibility studies, follow-up studies, and we also address the need to strengthen pragmatic clinical trials in Norway. As has already been mentioned, we have some very good health data through our national quality registries, and we have the national platform for health data analysis, which you'll hear about later. Next. And then we have the international collaboration. We worked a lot on the Nordic collaboration through something we call Nordic Trial Alliance, which is a network of clinical trial units in Norway. Now in the Nordic countries, also Nordic Proof, which addresses testing facilities for medical technologies. And we also take part in Horizon Europe. And as you all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has also emphasized the importance of international collaboration. It's also the point of this meeting. Next. So this is my last slide, and it's just because we also want to promote Norway as an important site for clinical trials and collaboration. And it's already been mentioned some of the points that we want to market from the Norwegian perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Maiken, for the very clear overview. And right? I hear echo. No? Okay. Thank you, Maiken, for this very clear review and presentation of the Clinical Study Action Plan in Norway. We will now take a closer look at the Health Data Program with Marianne Braaten, Product Manager at the Directorate of eHealth and leader for this groundbreaking health analysis platform and health data service. Marianne, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to do this one more time. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for the invitation. In Norway, we have many different health registries and other sources to health data, where data has been collected for decades for many different purposes. For example, as you can see, I could give you a list of many hundreds of different registries. But for example, we have medical birth register, register of cause of death, cancer registries, registers for cardiovascular diseases, vaccination registries, prescription registers, and so on and so on. And these registries are achieving the purposes very well and will still maintain to do so as they are established. But all this health data is a unique source of knowledge that makes it very valuable for secondary use also. And we can bring great benefits to the society if we can get this data more accessible for research, innovation, management, business development, and so on. And especially, there are enormous possibilities in how we can explore data and explore the correlation between the data across the different data sources. If we more easily could put data together and analyze data across all those different sources. But getting access to this data has been very time-consuming, costly, and unpredictable. And that is why we are developing several services that all together will make the data more accessible. We have made application services for the users. We are very soon going to establish one national permission authority that can permit access to data from several data sources and put the data together on a common platform. So we are now also developing and will soon establish the health analytics platform that will have data from many different data sources put together on the same platform. And that will make it more easy to analyze data independent from the origin of the data. The users do not longer need to know where all those data had their origin, because they will be put together on the platform. And then we will deliver data and analytics services so that it can be more easy to analyze data and to find different kinds of analytics services also on the platform. And also, the citizens are important. So we also establish services for citizens. So it can be possible for citizens to see their own data and how the data are used. And we will also make it more easy to let the citizens have the possibilities to give consent or to deny how we use their data. I will tell you a bit more about some of the services. One part of the application services is a website. The website gives you an overview and guidance about all the data sources. And on the website, you can also find a variable explorer based on metadata, which makes it possible to find out which variables are in which registries. And then we have published a common application form which makes it possible to apply for data independent from which register you need your data from. And on the website, you will get a project room for doing your analysis on the data. So altogether, it will be more easy to analyze data across different data sources. And you can also analyze data from the registries with data you might have collected in your own research. And we also hope that we can bring data produced during the research back to the platform so that it can be reused and give value for other projects, but it will be a bit in the future before it will be possible. And on the platform, it will also be possible to explore data without having the access to the real data, for example, by using a cohort explorer. And we can also give access to more data as synthetical data, and in that way, reduce the need for an application process at all to get access to the data. So all these services will stimulate to more and better research and other kinds of secondary use. And in that way, the platform will be a part of an analytical ecosystem where the concept will facilitate business development related to analysis of data. And we think that this will contribute to closer cooperation between the public, business, and academia. And of course, we also reduce physical sharing of health data and by then strengthen privacy. Then I will give you an example of the use of, an example of the use of services in clinical research. And here we can see a researcher. He wants to conduct a clinical study on a new form of treatment. And on the health analytics platform, he can find information on large patient groups and inhabitants across health registries. And by using this cohort explorer, he can simulate how different populations change with changes in the selection criteria. And this will give him a good starting point for recruiting patients to his study. And on the platform, he of course can conduct his studies, and he can also data can also be retrieved from the other sorts of platform. So again, summarized, the health analytics platform will facilitate advanced analysis by making data from different health data sources combined with your own data and data from patient records. Finally, before I finish, I would like to highlight what I also think is a success criteria when we are establishing those kinds of services, which is the trust of the citizens. And to get the trust of the citizens, we have to make them feel informed and empowered, and that is why it's so important for us to also establish what I showed you, these services for the citizens, so that when they feel informed and empowered, we think that they will also more easily want to share the data with us and let us use the data for all those good causes. And I think we all have important roles to get and to keep that trust. And that was my final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. What a fantastic project. This is now my pleasure to introduce you with Siri Kolle. Siri is the Clinical Vice President at Inventu, the technology transfer entity in the Southeast region, the biggest in Norway. Siri, please take the stage.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. Let me see, I have some I'm sorry, I have some problems getting this into presentation mode. I'll try again. Sorry for this. It's not working for the presentation mode, so I'll just make it bigger. There. we'll try that.
Hi Siri, I think you can try to double click. I think that goes to full screen. Oh, okay, no, sure. It's all right.
I'm sorry, it's I don't know how I do that. So I'll just go with this this view. So Invento is the largest technology transfer company in the Nordic region, and we are a leading actor within life science. We are owned by the University of Oslo and the Oslo University Hospital, and which is one of the largest hospital in the Nordic in the Northern Europe. But we represent all hospitals in the southeastern region of Norway. We have two main activities. We hold the exclusive rights to commercialize research and work results from the employees at our institutions. In addition, we manage agreements and do the financial follow-up of all clinical trials in our region on behalf of the hospitals and also the Nordic parts of Norway. Our purpose is to be a professional negotiator of clinical trial agreements and provide a single point of entry for all medtech companies and pharma companies starting trials at the 9 hospitals we represent. 3 of the 9 hospitals are university hospitals, and we represent more than 60% of the Norwegian population, which equals more than 3 million people. We are involved in most of the industry-initiated clinical trials in Norway, and we have today more than 400 ongoing trials. Our aim is to make the hospitals we represent as attractive as possible for the industry. Our focus is efficiency and performance. We have established standard startup processes that are identical at all the hospitals we represent, focusing on roles, responsibilities, and deadlines in order to make the time to start up of a clinical trial as quick as possible. We have also standardized agreement management and prices. We have company-specific agreements with more than 30 companies, and we have also standardized the prices for the most common clinical procedures, and they apply to all our hospitals and are publicly available. Having the agreements and the prices online contributes to a transparent collaboration. Information sharing, knowledge, and network sharing is important to attract clinical trials. Together with the hospitals, we conduct clinical training courses in the conduct of clinical trials and do matchmaking and networking events in order to bring companies and hospital sites together in order to facilitate collaboration. We also try to digitalize as much as possible of the administrative work for the trials, creating simplification. The hospital we represent have excellent resources for clinical trials. They are well organized and have a robust infrastructure. This makes us especially suited for complex clinical trials with advanced treatments and devices. The robust infrastructure has been clearly demonstrated this last year as the hospital has provided high performance in new and ongoing trials during the COVID-19 pandemic. This has been highly acknowledged by companies internationally. Our hospitals are known to be well equipped and have state-of-the-art facilities. Most of the hospitals have clinical trial units, test beds, and clinical trial support functions, providing useful resources. Norwegians are easy to recruit to clinical trials as we have a positive attitude towards research in healthcare, and the dropout rates are low. As mentioned earlier, all Norwegians have a personal ID where we can that gives information on location and survival and making long-term follow-up possible. As the hospitals are public, it makes the study population more ecologically valid as it represents the whole population. And as the previous presenter explained, our registries and biobanks are unique, making us fit for future study designs and pragmatic clinical trials. We are known to have a high digital competence in our population, making us suited for decentralized clinical trials and digital therapy. In addition, we also have internationally renowned expertise in several therapeutic areas. And in these therapeutic areas, like cancer, neurology, cardiology, imaging, gastromedicine, and children's medicine, we have several high-performance sites at most of our hospitals. These sites know exactly what is important for the industry, and they are known for their predictable high performance. They check all the boxes that the companies are looking for when selecting sites for new trials. For this reason, they are preferred partner for medtech companies and pharma companies. One area of expertise where we have proven our potential in our clinical resources is within cancer, and especially immune therapy. Trials within immune therapy makes up a substantial part of our study portfolio. Our hospitals are preferred partner for big pharma and also smaller biotech startup companies. In this area, we have the important building blocks making us attractive. We have internationally renowned expertise conducting basic and translational research. We have high performance clinical cancer trial units for both adults and children, providing advanced clinical trial management for early phase trials for all cancer diagnoses. We have the Cancer Registry of Norway with 100% national coverage and more than 32,000 new cancer incidents yearly. They provide detailed information on diagnostic measures, therapy, and follow-up, and there is no consent needed to use the data. The newest building block is the genomic sequencing infrastructure. This infrastructure is one of the initiatives in the National Action Plan and will be an important next step for precision medicine and screening and inclusion of patients to new clinical trials. The close collaboration and even co-location of the immunotherapy expertise at Oslo University Hospital, where you have the clinical cancer trial units that are leading in the Nordics, and you have the highly rewarded research group, like the research group at one of Europe's largest GMP certified cell therapy labs, has resulted in fast translation of new therapies. This innovative environment within cancer has led to several biotech startups, and the net value of these biotech startups are today $450,000 US. Hence, the unique clinical resources and expertise contributes to building a strong health industry in Norway and providing Norwegian patients increased access to explorative treatments in clinical trials.
Thank you for those very interesting insights, Maiken, Marianne, and Siri. I would like now to welcome Trine Radman, Head of International Affairs at Norway Health Tech, Hege Edvardsen, Senior Advisor R&D at the Trade Association of the Pharmaceutical Industry, and last but not least, Kjetil Widerberg, CEO of the Oslo Cancer Cluster. Thank you for joining us. So I would like to ask you, especially for the newcomers now in the panel, how this ambitious plan will impact the healthcare industry.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for inviting the Norwegian Pharma Trade Organization to partake in this event. I always wanted to go visit Singapore, so the only downside is that we are digital. From an industry perspective, the changes brought forth by the newly released National Action Plan for Clinical Studies, the new Health and Hospital Plan, as well as the Health Industry White Paper in Norway, make Norway an increasingly attractive country to place research and development projects in, including clinical studies. I think this can best be illustrated by the fact that when asked if they have a clear plan to increase the number of clinical trials in Norway, 75% of our member companies today running clinical trials in Norway confirm this. And we also see that new companies are starting to initiate clinical trials in Norway. One company alone indicates a planned increase in number of patients included to 30%, which is very good news and instrumental to achieve the goals set forth in the action plan described by presented by Maiken earlier. As you have already heard, there are many pros to Norway with regards to clinical trials from an industry viewpoint. A technology app population enabling decentralized trials and virtual trials to be performed successfully is one. High retention rate of patients in studies and close to no patient loss to follow-up are other important factors from an industry viewpoint. In addition, the professional and efficient contractor setup just described by Siri, Kolle, and a public health system enabling participation in clinical trials for all patients on equal footing is other factors. In Norway, clinical trials are primarily run in collaboration with the public health sector and not in private institutions, which reduces socioeconomic bias in inclusion of patients to trials. We also have a population which in general is positive to partake in clinical trials, and this combined with our international renowned clinical research environments are part of Norway's attractiveness when it comes to clinical studies. We are small, with just shy of 5.5 million inhabitants, but our population size has not been the problem so far, I would say, when it comes to attracting clinical studies. And we see it even less as an issue when you look into studies for advanced therapies such as cell therapy and gene therapy, where the resources or the research environments are more important factors, and where all patients counts to when it comes to execute studies efficiently. Our member companies are primarily represents global pharmaceutical companies, but we also see that the Norwegian setup around startup companies and with targeted healthcare clusters such as Oslo Cancer Cluster, headed by Ketil Widerberg, which follows after me, and Norway Health Tech Cluster, represented today by their Head of International Affairs, Trine Radman, makes for a highly innovative and fruitful environment for biotech, medtech, and e-health business, which is important. You need the whole ecosystem to work. So the culture for collaboration with industry, time to partake in clinical studies for clinicians and researchers, as well as the lack of incentives for the healthcare system to prioritize this, has been central topics of discussion when looking into how to increase clinical studies in Norway in the latter years. And with the new papers presented here in combination with the commissioner's document from the Ministry of Health and Care Services to the public healthcare sector and other stakeholders such as the Norwegian Medicines Agency, we do see a change coming forward. We see a strong increased interest from the public health sector towards the industry and vice versa for collaboration. And this is what we've all been hoping for. We truly look forward to be part of this change moving forward now. I think it's very good news and a very good timing to look into clinical studies in Norway.
Thank you. Ketil, maybe you want to come with input on the personalized medicine?
Yes, thank you very much for being here, and I think it's inspiring to see both from our public representatives here today and from the industry, this joint mission on seeing not only what we have in Norway, but how we are going to develop it. And for personalized medicine, this is especially important because as it comes more personalized and precise, groups get smaller and the demand and need for international collaboration increases. And then, so this is kind of a backdrop why we are talking to you today to see how can we collaborate on this from the innovative project in Singapore, from how our innovative product could be explored in Singapore as well. So I think that's kind of the backdrop where we're coming from. And you know, from what's happening today, the convergence between technology and biology in clinical trials, that is something which enable an acceleration. And it has been alluded to from many of my talks earlier today. But what's happening in clinical trials now is transforming. It's literally making innovation happening faster. And especially in precision medicine, this becomes clear. But I think we can see that from today, average of 10 years of clinical trials, average time, that will go down to 5 years. And the goal to, at least for Oslo Cancer Cluster, but I think I talk on behalf of many more people here, that we should decrease that to be average 5 years. And it's possible. And one of the reasons why this is possible is that currently we spend a lot of time to identify patients, as was alluded, but we also spend time on how do we secure that the treatment we present, the innovation, the medical device, the drug, does a increase compared to normal treatment. And if you think about just the databases we have in Norway, Unified Health System, a cancer register covers all patients, you can use those registries to see what happens if that innovation is not given. And that means that you can structure clinical trials or support them with data that will limit your development time. This is some of the most important things. It's not only happening in Norway. Many countries is working on this, but many of them has a not sufficient data or not sufficient coverage of the population to enable them to do that. In Norway, we have that. And this is something that we would like to collaborate with the rest of the world to see how can that be used to get new innovations faster to patients. One of the areas, and a concrete example, is currently a precision medicine project that was mentioned called IMPRESS. It's part of the drug protocol, which was initially started in Netherlands. It's an international, there are many countries into this. IMPRESS is a Norwegian study. And what we're trying to do is to look at genetic markers and see how drugs currently on the market can be used in new areas. And then to see, identify, are the signals of effect here good, and can then patients that are not today able to get benefits of those treatments, able to get it. This creates a new situation where we have also established an organization where both public and private partners is in, called Connect. Because if we have a positive signal of a small group of patients, how do we ensure we can continue using that outside a study situation? And this is something that we call, it's regulatory innovation. It's how we can use now new methods to document, to see how we can monitor, maybe stop treatment that won't work, and accelerate our monitoring of new innovations we see. This is an extremely interesting field and an area where Norway wants to be in front. And I think that this is something as we in Oslo Cancer Cluster are now trying our best to see how can we get the different pieces together to do that. And I think that Singapore is definitely an area we want to explore because we have so many similarities. Same amount of people, unified health system, a good health data and registers, and are there ways that we can work together within this field? That would be great. I can talk too long about this, so I'll stop myself now.
We know that. Thank you so much, Kjetil. Trine, I'm sure you have also some insight on the medtech side, which is your speciality at Norway Health Tech.
Yes, we have. Well, we're working quite closely with the medtech and the digital health, but it's not the major part of the clinical trials that we're doing today. But we hope, and we have a hairy goal of doing more clinical trials within medtech and digital health. And I think it's the ambitious plan of Norway to become a more prominent leader in medtech and e-health and digital health in the future. It also means that we need to do more clinical trials in these categories in the future. So I think it's very good with the action plan. I think that it will help us to also to become maybe the world leader in digital health. So that's very good for the health industry. And I think it's also very good for the patients all over the country with the action plan, since we are also moving the trials closer to where people live, also in the rural areas. And that means several here I've been talking about, more competence and more experience maybe when it comes to the health institutions all over the country, and that's very good. I think it's also very good for health professionals. And I have myself heard from one of the health professionals up north in Finnmark, and they were very satisfied with the action plan. So they could, start doing clinical trials also from that part of the country. So it's very good. But I think it's very important for us to grow the competence when it comes to how to do the clinical trials. It's not it's not easy, and you need a lot of knowledge to do it properly. And I think it's a way forward to go. But it's very good. And also when it comes to the medtech and digital health sector, we are prepared to do whatever it takes from our side to bring it on. So that's very good. And also, I think it's important to, since I'm representing a health technology cluster together with Kjetil, we are working through ecosystems. And these ecosystems, they are, we have members from health institutions, from the academia, we have the industry, we have researchers, we have all what it takes to make good clinical trials when you're bringing all these partners into the trial. So I think maybe we have something that we could bring into this action plan as well to make it work well.
Thank you, Trine. Thank you, Trine. And it's a really important point that you made, that a cluster is not only the industry, but a full ecosystem. So you have access to many different players in the same ecosystem. And not least, we haven't talked about that, but it's also the primary care services that are also part of the entire program. We haven't touched it so much. But now, as it was mentioned by Kjetil a little bit earlier, yes, Norway and Singapore, we look at it and we see that we have a lot of similarities with roughly the same amount of population, a very well-structured regional healthcare system. So how can we build on those similarities and reach a strong bilateral collaboration? So in other words, how can Norway be a useful partner for Singapore, and how, on the other hand, Singapore can be a useful partner for Norway?
Just a short comment. I think that just the fact that we're sitting here today and Maiken Engelstad, a representative from the Norwegian Ministry, says that there's a goal here to include and see how clinical trials can be available for more patients in our health system, and that we have a goal for having literally a learning health system where we collect those data to enable better treatment. I think that, to me, that's a very important invitation on how do we operate our healthcare system for the Norwegian population. And in the same time as Marianne, who works for the Minister for Health Data, says that we have built this system. We have built this and we invite in to do analysis on this. I think it's a very strong signals on how we want to use our health system and enable innovation to get better patient treatments. And when Siri, also representing the public bodies, saying that we work specifically, we have experience, we work precisely on these issues. I think that, to me, I get very happy of sessions like this, because it really shows, what are the groundwork we lie. And then it's literally, even though, we, Trine and myself and others, we do all we can to nurture Norwegian innovation and innovative companies. But that's not enough. We need international innovative companies, both large and small, to work on this, to develop these ecosystems. And I think that's to me, that's one of the main reasons we're sitting here today.
Thank you. Other input? Yeah, Hege.
Yeah, I would just say, to follow up on what Ketil said, that there's a new EU regulation now on medtech and e-health aspects for when you're going to use this in a healthcare setting. And Norway could be a very good close partner with the companies in Singapore that wants to enter the European market. It's a very good place to start to get into the EU market, I think, because with the ecosystems that we have here and the strong collaboration between industry and public healthcare sector that we see now, it's a very good place to be.
Thank you. And I have to say, on the other way around, Singapore is also a fantastic platform to enter the Asian market for Norwegian industry. So collaboration is important. Any other input from the panel?
I can maybe just mention that I think it's a great advantage actually with the small, well-structured countries. We also have a political foundation that says we really want to collaborate internationally on clinical trials, also outside Europe. And we're making these single entry points through no trials, which I think is also should make it quite easy for the industry from other parts of the world to actually get access to Norway. And I believe Norwegian hospitals and scientists will be very eager to also collaborate on clinical trials with Singapore. And I know from other areas I've collaborated a little bit with Singapore on the health research classification system. So I think the barriers, even though we're in different parts of the world, is not that great.
Thank you. With that, we will, and in order to respect the time, we will go to the questions Q&A online. So we have a question here. Are the hospitals, GP, dentists, etc., study teams in Norway ready for more patients in clinical trials? Maybe Maiken?
Sure, I think we're definitely ready for more patients because we have an economic incentive and an ambition that the hospitals in this year have to increase the number of patients recruited for clinical trials by 15%. And they have this, we have the goal of doubling the number of clinical trials in 5 years. So I definitely believe that there is an opportunity to increase the number of patients.
Yes, and another question that has been answered online, but I will ask it because I think it's important for everybody to understand that. The question is, are the clinical trials free or non-chargeable for local citizens of Norway, or is it the same fee for a free service extended for foreigners? So Maiken, you have answered, but can you repeat your answer to everybody?
Yes, so my answer is clinical trials, as I said, is an integrated part of healthcare. So, and healthcare is free for the citizens of Norway, and hence so are the clinical trials. But when it comes to foreign citizens, I think it's different. So then it's the same rules that apply whether you have access to the Norwegian healthcare system or whether you have access to clinical trials.
Yeah.
But of course, if you set up a collaboration, and I think that's the important thing, that for clinical trials, we can have trial sites both in Norway and in Singapore, and we can run them in parallel or together, and it would increase the number of patients and efficiency of running clinical trials. So I think that would be the way forward.
Yeah, we have a few questions on the chat that will be answered in writing, unfortunately, due to the lack of time. I would like to thank all of our panelists and all the attendees watching us right now. And I will give the word to Jody to wrap it up. Or not.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the great moderation of our session today. I would also like to thank all of the speakers and the presenters for taking the time off their busy schedules to join us and to give the sharing on the Norwegian healthcare system, as well as engaging with our attendees and answering their questions so actively. On behalf of SGInnovate, I would like to thank our friends, our close friends and event partner Innovation Norway for making this event possible. Lastly, to our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today as well and for staying till the end of the session. And please keep a lookout to our post-event EDM, where we will include a video recording of the session, as well as some of the slides that our presenters shared today. And lastly, I hope that everyone can continue to support innovation always, support SGInnovate, and to join us at the rest of our upcoming events. And please have a lovely evening or morning from wherever you're tuning from. Thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.